Professional and recreational runners are some of the most dedicated athletes that we have on the planet. But for as good of a job as they do sticking to their rigorous running schedules, they often do a bad job making sure they're spending adequate amounts of time perfecting their running quality. So what we're going to do in today's video is show you the 3 most common mistakes that we see runners make and show you ways in which you can correct and avoid those mistakes in a gym setting for peak performance and injury prevention. Hi guys, welcome to Stout Sport Performance. I'm Austin Stout, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the 3 most common running mistakes that runners are making. We're going to show you exactly how you can address some of these problems in a strength and conditioning based setting to make sure we're avoiding them and also getting the most out of our performance while preventing nagging pain and injury. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, runners can be some of the most dedicated individuals that you're going to meet. They're going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, throw down a glass of water, and then hit the streets, go get their hour-long run in, their 90-minute run in, whatever they're doing to get their miles in, and they go rush off to go to work. And that's great, but one of the things we have to make sure is that we're not forgetting the responsibility that we have to ourselves to make sure we're doing the things that are going to allow us to run with good quality and also for a long time. Now, the reality is we're not doing any of the other things we need to do, the mobilization, the extra strength work. At some point, we're not going to be able to continue to run in this manner. We're going to lead ourselves down a path of bad movement and injury, and you want to avoid that. If you're somebody that loves running, even if that means running a little bit less distance, if it's going to allow you to run for extra years, the trade-off in time that you're going to have to spend in a gym or doing some mobility work is going to be worth the trade-off, believe me. So try to incorporate some of the things you're going to learn about today in this video. So the first thing I want to talk about is the thing that most people need to work on, but runners especially are going to need this quality if they're going to perform well, and that's hip extension. So if you're a runner that also works in an office and you spend a lot of time in hip flexed position, it's almost a guarantee that you are losing a little bit of hip extension throughout your day. And the reality is, as we see, if we were to imagine me going through a stride of my run, as I enter this position where the knee is behind my hip, I'm in a position of hip extension. And if I don't have enough hip extension available because I spend a lot of my time in a hip flex position, seated at work, then what's going to happen is my lower back is going to compensate and extend for me, or we might have some other compensations throughout other parts of the body. So one of the first things that we're going to want to do is include within our training routine some dedicated time to actually extending our hip. So we might do a banded hip extension. For example, here I'm going to put this band directly on my hip. I'm going to place one knee on the ground, and I'm going to make sure I drive my hip forward so it's in an extended position. What we're looking for here is hip beyond knee with a nice upright torso. Now, the other thing we're going to add to this is a little bit of tension here in our glutes. We can use this as a warm-up or cool down or any other time. So what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze here in our glutes for 5 seconds. We're going to breathe in as we do that. And we're going to exhale slowly and let the tension in the glutes go. You can repeat that about 8 to 10 times. Now, the reason it's so important to start squeezing the glute in this position is because one of the things that can happen if we're sitting all day is, unfortunately, our glutes, which are primarily responsible for extending our hip, are going to fall asleep to that responsibility. So actively squeezing the glutes in this position is going to remind the glutes, hey, you got to contribute to extending my hip as I go through the run that I'm about to go on. And if you don't do that, unfortunately, your hamstrings might be compensating to that hip extension, and that's not good in the long term. It's going to reduce your performance and can definitely lead to some sort of pain and nagging injury with time. So make sure you're extending your hip. First, mobilize the hips. Use it as a warm-up, cool down. Try to get that in every day. 2 to 3 minutes is going to make a world of difference for you. You can also look up exercises like the couch stretch. Kelly Starr from the Ready State does some good explanations on hip extension, but the primary thing is we need to get ourselves in hip extension, maintain our ability to extend the hip, and then also remind our glutes that they're responsible for extending our hip. Now, the other area that we need a little bit of increased mobility is going to be in our T-spine. So our T-spine is another area that if we're working in an office setting tends to get tight. We end up being in this overly flexed position in our back, and this is going to be really disadvantageous because it's not going to allow us to control our pelvic position. And if we're good quality runners, we're able to maintain a quality pelvic position throughout our run. So we have to make sure we maintain our ability to keep this chest open and chest forward position throughout our runs, and making sure that we have enough T-spine extension and mobility to be able to do that. So we're going to take this foam roller, we're going to lie it on the ground, and we're first going to start by rolling between our shoulders. Now, as you get in this position, keep your feet on the ground to start. Give yourself a nice big bear hug and tuck your chin to your chest. And we're just going to drive in there up and down, left and right, just trying to work through some tissues. And with time, what we're going to do is actually reach ourselves into an extended position. We're going to reach the arms overhead. And we might even have a wall we can press on or something that we can hold in our hands, and just spend some time in this extended position, trying to control our breathing, 2 to 3 minutes here. Try to get that in a couple of times throughout the week. So these two mobility points, these two mobility exercises that you can perform are things you got to include on a consistent basis. We got to maintain mobility in these areas if we're going to be able to run with the quality that we're looking for, if we want to sustain that for a long period of time. So that's running mistake one, not having enough hip extension, not having enough T-spine extension. Now we're going to go here to mistake number two, and this is what I like to call flat tires. Now, of course, you don't have any actual tires, but your feet and your ankles, for me, are the tires of your car. And it doesn't matter how fit you are, how much fitness you've built from all the training you're doing. Like I said, I know you're a committed runner. If your tires aren't working correctly, it's going to lead to pain and injury at some point down the road, and you end up going to lose a lot of fitness if you're spending any significant time not being able to get your runs in. So we got to spend some time working on quality foot function, and that's going to start with our ability to maintain a stiff ankle. And so one of the exercises you can do to perform this, and this is something I've seen with my clients, it works really well. It's surprising how well this works. We're going to take here a bar, should be a PVC pipe or a broomstick, something very light. We're going to place this here behind our necks, and we're going to pull down on this slightly to help encourage this forward chest posture that we just talked about that we want to have. And it's also going to force us to stay nice and upright in our torso. So from here, we're going to place one foot, making sure that the heel of the foot is not touching the plate in front of us, onto this weighted plate. And we're going to make sure that the back heel is also slightly raised. Now, we might just start in this position. This might be where we stay if we're new to exercises of this nature, because eventually what we're going to do is turn this into a bit of a plyometric-based exercise where we're switching the positions of our legs and trying to maintain our position, stick that position as we switch the legs. Now, it's important to note here with the heel, we don't want the heel to drop as we switch the leg position into dorsiflexion. We also don't want to be extended into this plantar flex position. This is about mastering that step down portion of the run where we need to have that ankle to remain stiff and make sure that that heel stays slightly elevated off the ground. That's a sign of a good runner, that stiff ankle at landing that's able to maintain those impact forces. So with time, you get good at this. One of the things that we can do is we can start changing this exercise, making it somewhat reactive. We're going to go left leg, back to left leg before we pause. And if you get really good at this, and your core is starting to become functionally involved, we can start turning this into a little bit of a running pattern. Slight rotation to the right with the left leg in front. We're going to do the same thing. Just rotating now, adding a rotational component to the exercise. Important to note your core is still going to remain active. So, these exercise variations are designed to help get you to have and build a stiffer ankle. You're going to need that if you're going to run with good quality. So help make those tires a little bit more stiffer, absorb that force a little bit better, use elastic energy throughout the body in the running pattern a little bit better as well. Now, the second thing with tires is that they're affected by our glutes. So if our glutes are sleepy, if, for example, we've been sitting all day and the external rotators that we have that are responsible for maintaining this foot, knee, and hip alignment aren't working correctly, then what can happen is as we land, we might see an ankle collapse and a knee collapse that has less to do with the foot itself and more to do with this dysfunction or these sleeping glutes that we have. So one of the things that we might do is some single leg strength training, which as a runner you should definitely do. And we might take, for example, a band, and we're going to take this band, we're going to bring it just above our knee. And we're going to perform some split squats from here. With time, you can start adding weight to this and make it a truly strength-based exercise, but at the start, this is really good to get a feeling for engaging these lateral hip rotators, these glute muscles, to perform your split squats. So what we're going to do is we're going to press against that band. The band's going to pull your knee in. You're going to fight that and try to maintain a little bit of arch in the foot as well. And then from here, stay nice and upright, perform your split squats. Making sure foot, knee, and hip are aligned at all times, trying to actively squeeze and get some tension here in that outside upper region of your glute. So that's one example of a single leg strength exercise you're going to do. The other one that you can do, which you're going to see the transfer immediately, is a straight leg, single leg deadlift. And so the reason this exercise is so great is because we're standing in a straight leg position, which you think about touchdown at running, that leg is relatively straight. So we're going to perform here a single leg, straight leg deadlift. Again, these glutes are going to be challenged just like they were in that last exercise. We're going to maintain the same knee flexion throughout, and we're going to get a ton of proprioceptive input at the ankle, which is also going to be really important for those tires as well. They're going to help that ankle stiffness, those functioning tire concept as well. So that's common mistake number 2 is bad tires. And as we just learned, that can come from the tires themselves. We need to create some more ankle stiffness, or that can come here from our glute function, making sure those external rotators are working a little bit better. The last thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be shoes. And this is a huge mistake that runners make, especially your average recreational runner. For example, this isn't an untypical story. Somebody starts running, they're running for a long period of time, they start getting some pain somewhere in their knee, their hip, and they throw in a brace over the knee, and they buy a pair of motion control shoes or really thick insoled shoes. And maybe that takes away the pain for a small period of time, but at some point that pain comes back. And the reason is, especially when we talk about these thick insoled shoes, one, if pain arises, you never actually fix the problem. You've covered the problem up by trying to find a short-term solution. But two, these thick insoled shoes no longer allow your foot to interact with the ground, and they fundamentally change the mechanics that you have within your running pattern. So for example, if we were to ask you to take your shoes off and record you running for about 100 meters, what you're going to notice is your running mechanics are immediately going to change. You're going to run with either your heel completely off the ground, or you're going to make first contact with the ground through your running pattern with the midfoot and the forefoot. Now, if we ask you to start running with those big shoes with the big cushioned soles on, what you're going to notice is you might start running heel toe. To make things worse, that heel is likely going to land in front of your body, which is going to be mechanically disadvantageous to high quality running performance. We want that foot to land right under our center of mass, right under the body when we come through one stride of that running pattern. So that's really one of the biggest mistakes runners make. They pick these big cushioned insoled shoes and they think that's going to help them perform better. The reality is, while we don't want to transition to a shoe with no insole quickly, our running mechanics are going to be greatly impacted, negatively impacted by wearing those thick, cushioned, highly motion control based shoes. So if we go over what we've covered today, if we're going to run for a long period of time, you want to be a lifelong runner, you want to be a runner that reaches their true maximum performance and avoids injury, you have to spend some time making sure you're maintaining some qualities that are going to help you improve your running. So the first thing, get some shoes with some less thick insoles. Now that transition is going to take you time. Don't go from 0 to 100, but that's a really easy fix. Get some shoes, mix them in once a week, mix them in for the first mile of a run here and there until you get to the point where you can do it pain-free and without any excess soreness after wearing them. But thinner insoled shoes are going to be your friend with time for the functional quality of your running. The second thing you have to spend time doing is working on your tires. Make sure that you have appropriate ankle stiffness by performing some of the exercises that we showed you in this video. And also make sure you're spending enough time doing single leg exercise and strength-based exercises at the gym to make sure that your glutes and your lower legs are functioning properly and functioning together. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is make sure you maintain enough mobility in your hip extension and also maintain enough T-spine extension, especially focusing on making sure our glutes are contributing to that hip extension when we perform some of those exercises. So thank you guys for watching. If you're a runner, give those a try. Drop a comment if you have any questions. We'd be happy to do another video on this topic and give you some other things you can think about to be an effective runner. And make sure you like and subscribe this video for more training content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.